¿Alguna vez habían visto un árbol con tanto cabello? Pues, ¿qué creen? Este no es cabello. Son nada más y nada menos que arañas patonas. Vean nada más. Vaya. Ay. Vean nada más. Si tú pensabas que era cabello, no lo es.
Dude needs to be using a much longer stick if he plans on poking at that hairy tree again. Welcome to the channel, everybody. Let's get after it.
Colombia is being invaded by spheres. There's more of them showing up. Alright, check out this footage that just came out from Jumbo, Colombia, which is just under an hour's drive from Buga. So this video came from this channel on YouTube yesterday, June 11th, so go there if you want to see the original high-quality footage. And this is just some of the clearest footage of something like this that I've ever seen. Now, this object seems completely silent and it's making all these strange maneuvers. Check it out. And when you look closer at it, it looks like the same type of sphere as the Buga-sphere. Some people think it might be out there actually trying to find the Buga-sphere, which crashed down a couple months ago, allegedly. Here's a zoomed in and slowed down shot. Just look at it. It has the same ridgeline and holes around the center of it, just like the Buga-sphere. Now, I've read the skeptical comments, of course. A lot of people think this is just a really good fake using AI or CGI, or that it's a prop attached with fishing wire to a drone that's higher up in the sky, out of view. Now, some claim they can even hear drone motors going, but to be honest, I maxed out the volume and it just sounds like background noise to me. So if this was faked, wouldn't someone want to just switch out the audio? I mean, check this out. Others think that it might be a drone itself surrounded by a metal shell and that the bottom is this wire mesh so that the propellers on it can actually work to generate lift. Now, this just seems like the footage is too good, so everyone's trying to debunk it, because if it looks too good, it's not real, but if it looks too blurry or the quality of footage is bad, it's also not real. There's no happy medium. The only thing to me that points to this potentially being a hoax is when you zoom in here on the video on the grass before the sphere ducks behind it, it looks like it's actually in front of the blade of grass, which is more in the foreground. So that's a little bit suspicious, but it could just be a digital artifact or something similar to like we see in the moon landing photos from the Apollo missions, where there's the crosshairs on the images and some of them look like they're blown out or missing, or they're behind the astronauts. But what do you think? Is this just an elaborate hoax, or is there something really going on here? Let me know in the comments.
This one is kind of weird because I don't really feel like it matters. We already have one of these in our possession. Seeing more of them flying around is not going to give us any new information aside from what their typical flight patterns are. I know that bit at the end looks a little suspicious where it looks like it's artifacting through those blades of grass, but I just don't see the point in faking something like this. If someone was going to fake something, wouldn't it be much more likely that they would come up with something that we don't have all these images and detailed measurements of? Using a known object is just going to make it easier to debunk if it isn't real, and it's not going to draw nearly the same amount of attention as something new would. I just don't see the logic behind faking this. I'm not saying that it's absolutely 100% real, but there would be very little to gain from making a fake video of one of these orbs.
Probably gonna get a weird feeling in your body when you watch this documentary, but you're also gonna learn a lot, especially about the company that was behind this whole concert, which was Live Nation. Before it even started, this whole disaster of Astroworld was predictable, and Live Nation was sending texts saying there's no way we can fit 50,000 people in this concert, and staff were texting during the concert saying people are passing out, people are unconscious, full-on panic is in people's eyes, and yet they didn't stop the show. Literally acknowledge that someone could lose their life in this situation, which many people tragically did. I mean, there are disturbing scenes of people doing CPR in the crowd, and in the background, Travis Scott is just full-on performing, and they never whispered in his earpiece, which they could have, to stop the show. The documentary explains how the crowd setup basically became a trap because people were coming in from the sides to see the show, and then once the music started, people got boxed in by the crowd barriers and there was almost no way for them to get out. Some of the workers on the documentary said they were even told to play into the whole chaos. The promo videos literally showed people jumping over fences to get in, and that's exactly what happened. Now, the documentary doesn't cover this, but I think there's something way deeper, and it's the symbolism behind the whole concert. If you've been following me, You've probably seen the videos already, but the stage in itself was shaped as an upside down cross, and behind that was a portal, and the portal says the escape plan, which is ironic because people were literally finding out ways to escape. It also said things like "see you on the other side." Even the shirt Travis Scott was weird in itself. It's people walking into a door and they're coming out as little red devils. There's just way too many red flags, and you can go watch some of my old videos if you want to go see all the symbolism, because there's a lot more. But the worst part of it all is that no one was criminally charged, and it felt like no one was held responsible for this. And then Travis Scott went on to break records in 2024, selling out one of the highest grossing tours of all time, and it was produced by Live Nation.
Here's something interesting that I thought about while watching this. I used to really be into the music scene. I've been in multiple bands, I've filmed music videos for R&B groups, I've helped other bands write and record their albums. I've been around a ton of people who are trying to make it in the music industry. I've even played with a few bands that went on to have some pretty decent success. I actually played a couple of shows with the band 10 years before they got their record deal. But out of all the contact that I've had with these artists, I've never heard one of them bring up anything in conversation about having an allegiance to Satan. Taking that into account and then looking at some of the before and after photos of some of these famous singers, it's more than obvious to me that most of these singers who actually make it in the industry probably have no idea what they're actually signing up for. And we're all just sitting here watching the aftermath of what it looks like when you sell your soul for fame. Hey, don't forget to click like and subscribe if you haven't already, and check out my merch store at barry-stepp.com.
I thought, oh, everything's peaceful now, like I'm with God, like I'm chill. I was going bold, media's hating, whatever. And then October 2021, I get offered a multi-million-dollar deal from a label, and they said, we're gonna make you the male Adele. You can't say God, you can't say Jesus, you can't talk about Trump, you can't post. We're going to take over your social media. We're going to write 2 albums for you. It's going to be a 3-year contract. And I was going to do it. And I was like, okay, this is from God. I'm like, yeah, I'm good now. Like, God's blessing me. Yay. Like, you know, and I'm sitting with my friend and he said, if you sign that, you're selling your soul. And I said, why? I'm not doing rituals anymore. I'm not doing, and he was like a heavy Christian, and I was just learning about like Jesus, so I didn't know much about, you know, anything yet. But he said, what profits a man to gain the world and lose his soul? You're willing to take that money and not talk about anything you experienced and just basically shut up? This is a silencing contract. This isn't a record deal.
The censorship contract.
Yeah.
Of course, there's nothing we can do here but to just take this guy's word for it. They'll sign you to some lucrative-looking record deal, but if you get out here and start trying to help people and spread the word of Jesus, your contract's null and void. I think one of these up-and-coming artists needs to get their hands on one of these contracts when it's presented to them and upload it online for the world to see. Make it public. These companies need to be exposed and let everybody see what kind of nonsense their favorite celebrities signed in order to get their name in lights. Maybe if people can start waking up to the fact that a lot of these celebrities are just puppets doing the devil's dirty work, they'll stop idolizing these people and see them for who they truly are. They're not stars, they're just horribly misguided human beings.
Little red dot that I have here shows you the attempted point of entry. They were using a diamond tip drill bit to try to get into this craft. So the question is, if this is one of ours, why would they be trying to get into this? So is this the beginning origin point of a reverse engineering program?
You know, some of the UFO crash retrieval material, we've looked at it and we found that the materials used are very strange.
When extraterrestrial material is recovered through military crash retrievals and its metallic structure is examined under a microscope, the metal is so pure that we could not replicate it, even in a vacuum in space. This is because extraterrestrial crafts are not manufactured on a Ford assembly line the way humans would manufacture something. Everything in the material universe has a frequency and a corresponding sound vibration that creates and sustains its being. Extraterrestrials manufacture objects by first creating a resonant frequency. For instance, the frequency of a flying saucer. This is a sort of vibrational blueprint that interacts with the substrate of the physical universe, pulling into existence, from other dimensions, atoms and molecules that then organize and condense into the structure of the object being created. In this way, extraterrestrial material is literally manifested into being. like transdimensional 3D printing or Star Trek's replicator technology.
I don't know where these guys are getting their information to be talking about this in such a matter-of-fact way, but I like this theory. That Boogosphere seems to have some odd manufacturing techniques being utilized in its production. They can't seem to find a seam on the thing, implying it's one solid piece of metal, and it clearly has something inside of it that they're picking up whenever they're doing scans. How would you manipulate metal like that without heating it up to the degree that it would likely destroy whatever technology they've got implanted in the middle of it? Maybe they do just manifest this stuff into existence. That's a hard one to wrap your head around, but I've literally heard not one other explanation or even theory as to how this Boogosphere was likely made.
The fact that the CIA has to be called is evidence that I'm telling the truth. And I set up some interviews with astronauts telling them I'm doing a documentary about the moon landing, which is true. And they assumed that I, thought they were true. In this particular case, Edgar Mitchell, we have a TV monitor set up. We show him the window shot of them faking being halfway to the moon. He gets very mad. Where did you get this? He turns beet red. He starts cursing, literally kicks me from behind. And get the hell out of my house. And in the commotion, we left a very high quality wireless microphone on him. And in the commotion, my camera operator forgets to hit stop record. So as the camera is being put in the back seat of the rental car, the tape is still rolling, and we're recording the private audio of the astronaut and his son in their house who are saying, "You want to call the CIA? Have them whacked?" Why would an Apollo astronaut have the CIA in his Rolodex?
That dude said that like he knew it was a legitimate option. That's terrifying. I guess all it takes is just talking to the wrong person one time, and that's all she wrote. They can't let anyone get too close to the truth. I think that's one of the most damning pieces of evidence that I've seen yet, showing these astronauts are really just actors lying to the public. If they hadn't faked that photo, then the astronaut would be eager to put this reporter in his place and make him look like a fool by explaining why the photo looks so suspicious. He would have a reasonable explanation. His reaction just gave the whole thing away. People don't get angry when you question them about something that they actually have a good answer for. They just answer your question.
This is an ancient Chinese map from the Ming Dynasty in 1602, and you won't believe how it describes some of the places on here. Check this out. First, we have the Little People Kingdom. They are about 30 centimeters tall. They mature at 5 years and age rapidly by 8. They live in caves to avoid large birds that hunt them as prey. Each summer, they destroy bird eggs. Their mounts are sheep. Second, we have the Kingdom of Ghost. They hide by day and hunt at night. Their clothes are made of deerskin. While their eyes and ears and nose look normal, their mouths are on top of their heads. They eat deer and snakes. Third, we have the northwest region of the Kingdom of Dada. The tradition here is that when their parents grow old, their children must unalive them and eat their... It's considered burying them in their own stomachs, instead of in the mountains, as a way to show respect and spare them from hardship. Here, we have a place once called the Kingdom of Women. Men also lived in this place. However, when too many boys were born, they would be unalived. Now it's controlled by men with only the name left. Next, we have the Kingdom of Black People. This place must be closest to the sun because the people there have black skin. They do not wear clothes and have curly hair. Next, we have the Kingdom of Woshir. The people here do not build houses or farm. They live in caves, eat, but just the men, never the women. I thought those were some pretty interesting accounts for the Chinese to actually have documented and written on maps by region. I doubt it's folklore. I mean, who knows, could be wrong, but it seems to be some sort of documentation of actual people or entities or creatures living in certain regions. Really cool stuff.
I dug around the internet for a long time trying to find a copy of this map. I was unsuccessful. I even dropped a bunch of the terminology and phrases off the map into Grok and couldn't get it to pull up anything either. Now, I don't really know what to make of it since I can't find the original map and dig into it. I'm betting this is just a map that somebody made for the fun of it. Oddly enough, if you try to actually look this up on Google, you get flooded with results of some, I could only describe it as a controversial theme park in China called the Kingdom of the Little People. It's some theme park they opened over there that only employs people with dwarfism. And I'm not saying this is the case, but I would find it very suspicious if we later found out that this map is real, that they opened a theme park in the same region with the same name, therefore flooding the internet with alternative search results whenever you try to look up anything about this map. That could have been intentional. Things like that have been done before.
Hold up. You mean to tell me that they found a 30-million-year-old old world under the Antarctic ice? Now, this discovery was by geologist Stuart Jamerson, and he said they had rivers, forests, and even palm trees. Now, this study began in 2017 when the team started drilling in a seabed to extract sediment from the ecosystem buried beneath the ice. But it doesn't stop there, because scientists has also discovered strange radio signals coming from beneath the ice as well. Now, according to this release, the reason Antarctica was the site for these experiments was due to little to no interference from other radio waves. However, the researchers found radio waves transmitting from underneath the ice. Now, with all that being said, isn't it weird that Hitler himself had an expedition to Antarctica in 1938? Where not only he researched and did experiments, but also claimed a piece of the region called New Swaba. Not to mention, Hitler didn't die where they said he died. He actually fled to Argentina in the declassified CIA documents showing this, where Argentina could be a jump point for Antarctica, but that's just a theory. And if you didn't know, just to add layers to this ice wall, there's actually a Rothschild Island in Antarctica. I mean, isn't it funny, with wars and so many disagreements across nations, we could all agree on the Antarctic Treaty, in which is an international agreement between all nations for Antarctica to only be used for peaceful purposes and scientific research only. Could it be that this old world actually looks something like this? Being that there's a treaty in place and you just can't catch a flight down there, I think there's definitely something they're hiding. So the question is, what are they hiding from us? What are those sounds? And is there really an old world?
Isn't it funny how they won't let anyone travel there to explore or even look around because of safety concerns, but they'll let the Rothschilds own part of it? It has nothing to do with safety. We just don't have enough money and influence to be worthy of finding out what they're hiding there. I'm honestly surprised that they even put this information out. They don't like telling us anything about Antarctica unless it's misinformation. This makes me think this is likely a controlled release. They're probably putting this information out there to either confuse us or to use it as evidence for something they have planned in the future. Maybe they're wanting us to associate these underground radio waves with the supposed underwater alien bases. I don't really know what to think about this one yet. They haven't put out a whole lot of information, but I also feel like we should be very careful in listening to absolutely anything that they put out in regards to Antarctica. They've been too secretive about it in the past. It just wouldn't make sense that they would release any of this information if it actually meant something.
This story is 100% real, and no one can explain what happened to this group of 9 students. They were all incredibly experienced hikers, and in 1959 decided to set off on a 2-week expedition into the frozen Ural mountain ranges of Russia. A week into their trek, harsh snowstorms forced them to set up camp and wait it out halfway up one of the mountains. These were the last photos taken by the hikers before they went missing. A few weeks later, when they never returned back home to their families, a search party was sent out to find them. The rescue team came across their campsite, and what they found was far worse than what anyone could have ever imagined. Their tents were intentionally torn to shreds with a sharp object, yet all of their clothes, gear, and even fresh meals were inside, neatly stacked and untouched among the ruins. They find a journal with a final entry reading, "I wonder what awaits us on this hike. Will anything new happen?" Oh, and were they right about that. All 9 bodies were nowhere to be found, but they see a trail of footprints leading away from the camp and out into the barren Russian tundra. But the footprints were barefoot, even though it would have been like 30 below zero at the time, with the indentations in the snow indicating they walked away in a calm, orderly fashion. fashion, as opposed to running away in a panic as you'd expect in a situation like this. They follow the prints and find 5 of the hikers' bodies wearing nothing but their underwear, who would have been in the middle of a massive snowstorm and presumably died of hypothermia. The bodies were mangled, covered in severe cuts, bruises, and strangest of all, 3rd-degree burns. One of them even had a chunk of flesh missing from his right hand and inside of his mouth, like he tried biting his own hand off. Months of searching later, they find the bodies of the 4 remaining hikers in a riverbed 250 feet away, and this is where the story gets even weirder. This time, these hikers' bodies were all wearing the clothes of their dead friends, found in a makeshift shelter like they were trying to hide from someone or something. And these bodies had even more serious injuries all over them: chest fractures, cracked skulls. Some had their tongues and lips cut off, and eyes gouged out of their sockets. Above all, a few of the bodies were radioactive, like they had been recently exposed to nuclear radiation. On record, the official cause of death of this incident was an unknown compelling force which the hikers were unable to overcome. This is the Dyatlov Pass incident, named after the one who led this expedition, Igor Dyatlov. At first glance, it might even seem obvious. A psychopath or a group of psychos came across their encampment, slashed their tents open, and chased them down. But that theory completely fell apart, as upon further investigation, they realized the tents were slashed open from the inside, meaning whatever happened to someone in the tents, presumably one or a few of them. But even then, the neatly folded, unused gear, the near-naked bodies in the middle of the snow, other bodies wearing their friends' clothes with their tongues and eyes gouged out, their radiation. None of it makes any sense, and no one's been able to piece together exactly what happened. Some say avalanche, others say Yeti, some an attack by the local indigenous Mansi tribe people, or just hypothermic delirium. The Dyatlov Pass incident has become one of the biggest unsolved mysteries of the internet, and some theories claim they figured it out. The families of the victims demanded answers from the Soviet government for years, who strangely classified all photos, files, and journals recovered during their search. The area was made off limits, and all other evidence collected was destroyed, which was unusual for a civilian incident, even for the Soviet Union. Kinda like something happened there they didn't want anyone to know about. Well, originally, there were only supposed to be 8 hikers on this trek, but strangely, this guy, Semyon Zolotaryov, was added last second, who was significantly older than the rest, and was also a war veteran with many years of military service, suspected to be an undercover KGB agent, Soviet intelligence, with the true objective of this expedition hidden from the rest of the group, which one particularly interesting theory states its purpose was to test a top-secret Soviet weapon, led by the supposed KGB agent, a mission either gone horribly wrong or him sent in as a sacrifice, as numerous campers in the region claimed they saw strange lights and glowing orbs moving across the sky in the same night, possibly UFOs, or some sort of satellite-based weapon system that led to their untimely demise. And of course, if something like this actually did happen, you can bet the Soviet Union will be quick to cover it up, going as far as even sending restagers as part of the original rescue team to mess around with the campsite and mangle the bodies to confuse investigations, which to be fair does sound something like the KGB would do. But even that doesn't explain the calm, orderly footprints in the snow, the gouged eyes, the tent being cut open from the inside. Maybe they were testing some mind control device that made them all go crazy. No one really knows what happened at Dyatlov Pass. Even the ones who claim they irrefutably solved it are really just guessing. No matter the theory, there's always some element of the story that just doesn't quite fit. On record, this case is still technically unsolved, although it was briefly reopened in 2019 only to rule out any criminal activity, and claiming that a slab avalanche was the most likely cause of the incident, which honestly doesn't really make any sense, and they know it. Only for the case to be closed again, forever a mystery.
I've had a theory about the Dyatlov Pass incident for a while now. I just wanted to share it with everyone and get y'all's take on it. I've researched this case several different times, and I always seem to come to the same conclusion. I think a lot of the details in this case are irrelevant, like the lights in the sky that night, or the military guy being added to the expedition at the last second. I don't think that those details do anything but add confusion to a story that likely has a very reasonable explanation. I think what likely happened is they were all relaxing in that tent, partially clothed, just enjoying the heat from their camp stove after a long day of hiking. I think somebody messed something up, and that stove started dumping smoke into the tent so fast that they couldn't see to find their way out. If that happened, they would have no choice but to cut through the walls to try to make their escape. And they wouldn't have taken off running after leaving the tent, even though they're barefoot, because it would be pointless. Where would they be running to? They had nowhere to go. I feel like that would explain the casual nature of the footprints. They were screwed, and they likely knew it. But that's why I think they left the tent. I think the odd injuries were probably due to some bad decisions that the last couple of survivors had to make in order to try to keep themselves alive. What do y'all think?
We were taught to expect some glorious future event, the second coming, a utopian age where Christ returns, peace reigns, and the earth is restored. But what if that wasn't a future prophecy, but a memory? According to the book of Revelation, Christ returns, he defeats the beast, then comes a 1,000-year reign of peace. That green line? Right there. No wars, no deception, just a divinely ordered world, guided by saints, sages, and spiritual authority. The scholars of preterism are assuming that that time happened in 70 AD. See this little tiny orange blip of a rectangle there? That would have been the life of Christ. The very end of that line, and where that black line goes straight up and down, would have been 70 AD, where they assume, based off of their studies, that's when the millennial reign actually began. And this was just after the destruction of the Second Temple in Jerusalem, a moment that sparked the end of an age and the beginning of something very sacred. For nearly 1,000 years, the world was covered in peace and divine creativity. You can still see the evidence in the architecture. You know, the buildings they tried to mislabel, resonant cathedrals filled with harmonic codes, cities that honored balance, nature, and sacred symmetry. It wasn't primitive, it wasn't chaotic, it was the divine blueprint in motion. Heaven on earth. We're looking at these cultures here. We'll get into that. As we see here, just before Jesus' life began, we've got the Celtics, the Greeks, Mesoamericans, and the Norse. We've got this new sort of a new class, if you will. I find this a little fascinating. I gotta be honest. These were all earthbound traditions. And I want to point out here that this dark blue line, the Greeks, it didn't begin up here pre-flood. It was quite a whiles away from this time. So when people are talking about the Nephilim, and if you have this idea that the Nephilim were the gods of old, you're not necessarily wrong, but you just want to check this timeline here, because it wasn't a pre-flood Greek mythology. It was way after. So this will completely blow out of the water the idea that the Nephilim only existed pre-flood. No. In fact, there's a verse in the Bible that literally says that they were around before and after. So let's keep going. So something we need to keep in mind is that not all Nephilim were bad. Or even what we're calling Nephilim were not even perhaps Nephilim. Some of them might have been angels. They might have even been the saints returning in the millennial reign, as we see these lines extend far beyond into it. And it was during this millennial reign that Christ did not rule alone. He ruled through the saints, those who carried divine frequency, and they walked in remembrance. They didn't wear crowns of gold. They tended to the earth. They sang the truth into stone. They created art, healed bodies, aligned ley lines, and kept the flame. But of course, this did not last forever, because scripture said that after the millennial reign, Satan would be loosed for a little season. What came next was the world that you and I were born into, right over here. If you've ever felt like your soul was born out of order, like you came from a better world, and can't quite explain why this one feels so wrong, it's because you did. You were born after the golden age, during the distortion, during the lie.
Her assessment of the timeline of these other religions, that feels like a huge piece of evidence right there. If we had these other major religions being practiced all over the world, yet they all seem to stop around the same time, and then our current competitors for Christianity all seem to start up around the same time, or at least after this 1,000-year period, there's not a lot that could explain that. And the explanation that they give us to explain this 1,000 years of missing history is that everyone was dumb and illiterate and no one was writing anything down. I think that explanation is evidence of a cover-up. There were well-documented historical records long before the so-called Dark Ages. The idea that the entire population was dumbed down overnight and everyone just stopped writing things down and keeping record of anything is one of the laziest excuses that I've ever heard in my life, and I just don't buy it. The more I investigate this theory, the more I'm convinced of its validity. But guys and gals, I'm going to go ahead and end the video right there. I hope you enjoyed these clips we watched together today. I'll be back soon with another video. I hope you come back to join me. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and check out my merch store at barry-stepp.com. And don't forget to drop a photo of your merch over in the Discord to get your photo in a video. And finally, remember to stay away from the hairy trees. But guys and gals, I hope everyone has a great, safe, fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you all in the next one.